That's not even the exception to the human experience. We are the exception to the human experience, because those battles and civil wars and skirmishes and raids on villages, that's all you find. We're reading some of it now with the Philistines and the Hittites and the Israelites and the battles and the skirmishes and the men determining everything and the patriarchy, their patriarchy against this patriarchy. So you could sit here and you can, in your mind, in the abstract, sit in a comfortable college classroom and you can imagine what it would be like to change all these gender roles and how awesome it would be. And it's just not reality, man. It's not. And then they go to Iraq, and you see what happens in Iraq. Oh man, it'll pull your heartstrings to watch. It's only an hour and a half long, but it had me riveted. It seemed like it was maybe 40 minutes long. It went by very fast. It kept you engaged through the whole thing. It's called Free Burma Rangers. It's supposed to come out at movie theaters, but probably 10 in the whole country. You know, it's a Christian thing. It's not going to be like at every theater. But you can watch it online now. I don't know. We rented it $6 or $8. I don't know what it was. And if you can't afford to pay to watch it, then let us know, and we'll have you come over one day and we'll watch it here. I don't care. I think everybody should watch it because you're going to learn a lot about human nature, and you're going to learn a lot about why gender roles are important, and that comes out right out of what we're talking about here. Abigail had the wisdom to approach David the right way, and it ended up enabling David to receive her wisdom, to accept it. He was rescued from his own heat of the moment passions. Her family was saved and rescued from it. And I love the passage because it's the woman here dispensing the wisdom, right? And again, it's another controversial thing that you hardly won't ever hear Baptists talk about. Women wise, they should just shut up. You know, it's just the dumbest thing. And so I want to emphasize that here. And I'm not going to just skip by it real fast. I want to emphasize that because Abigail is the wisest person in the room in this whole account. Right? She just is. And she's someone else's wife. Her husband's a fool. And she's the wisest one out of all of them, but she was so wise that she knew how to speak to David. Right? She just like, hear my wisdom. And then, you know, he'd have pushed back against that if it became a battle of authority. So she took that right out of the equation. This man is not going to receive, and she would have learned that from what? From dealing with a fool for a husband. Right. Her only prayer of ever getting anything through with that guy was to have a submissive spirit. And so not only is what she said in her message very wise, how she said it was very wise. And that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. You can say the same thing the wrong way, and it's going to go all kinds of sideways. But if you say you can say the wrong thing the right way, and people take that as wrong advice. You know, so there's something to how you say things is more important than what you're saying is what I'm saying. How you say it is more important than what you're saying, whether right or wrong. But again, here, you know, and again, it's in a public setting, so it's not like David and Abigail were off to the side. That's totally inappropriate. You know, that's someone else's wife. You shouldn't be alone with someone else's wife. All those things are true. But here, they're in a public setting, and she's speaking, and there's all these men standing around. Now, who's going to have the final call on how this is going to go down? David. David's going to have the final say on how this goes down. So she's not there as an authority, but she's just there with a message, and the message is very wise. And how she said it enabled David, because of how he's wired as a man, enabled him to receive the message. So it was no longer a battle of, oh yeah, I'm the authority, I'll show you. It was already acknowledged he's the authority. Okay, so this isn't a discussion about authority. All right, now what is it that you're saying again? Because I got a decision to make. I have a decision. You don't have a decision. I have a decision to make. But what's your case? He hears it and he's like, well, wowee. Now that's right. You're right. You are right, Abigail. You're right. So let's go through exactly what she says here. So Starting at verse number 24, she fell at his feet and said, Upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal. And this is she's talking about her husband here, and she would have never said any such a thing if he were standing there. But she's right now appealing. She's trying to save Nabal. Right. So I don't think she would talk this way, just generally speaking. We've got no indication that she was a gossip of any sort like that. But here she's acknowledging to David what David already knows. Her husband's done wrong, right? So she's like, let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, and that we told you last week, his name means fool, so as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. So she says, so I wasn't there when your guys came, and I would have been able to prevent this in the first place and honored your request to begin with, and we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have had anything to get upset about. We would have sent you what you needed, your food, whatever you needed. We would have supplied it if I had been there. It's basically what she's saying. But I wasn't there, so now give me a chance. Now listen to me. I'm not guilty of anything. So here's what I have to say, she says. So she's acknowledging the reality of the situation. My husband's a fool. What he did was foolish. I'm appealing to your authority here. Hear me out. Verse 26, now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood. Now, she's either jumping ahead and putting the idea in David's head through saying this, that, oh, you're not really coming to shed blood now because we're having this conversation, so that your goal has already changed. Or she discerns David's resignation to, okay, I've put my decision on hold about wiping out all the males in your family. She's discerned that he's okay. Now I've got a new decision to make. My decision's not made. I'm open to hearing you, right? So therefore, that means his intended course of action has already been put on the back burner. So she's noticed that, she's discerned that, and said so. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood. So she's not giving herself any credit. She's giving the Lord credit. And from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies, and they that seek evil to my Lord, be as Nabal, which is powerless and foolish. Whoever's trying to hurt you, let them be like Nabal. He says, let it be given unto the... That's further down the path here. Let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I jumped ahead. Verse 27, and now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. So she had a batch of food and gifts and stuff with her, and she sent some with others. And this initial batch, she says, give it to the 10 guys that were insulted. Give this to them. Here, this is to make up for the insult they had to face. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid. So she's like saying, put it all on my account. Again, this is a good example of, what's the word? I've lost the word, where it's about putting something on your account. Paul does the same thing. Jesus does the same thing. The word will come to me before the end of the class, I'm sure. So she says, put it all on me. Just put it all on my account, as if Nabal never did. Just put it all on me. And here I am representing some meekness here. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord, and she's talking about David. She's calling him my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house. Again, this is just another example of what the word house means. It's not like she's saying he's going to give you a great Cape Cod, a very sturdy one. That's not what she's saying. A sure house. Again, a house is everything under your control, your estate. That's what a house is. Because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. Now we know David's done some things wrong, right? And so she's either using hyperbole here, But I don't think so. I think she's basically talking about David as far as the facts that she understands them. As a public servant, David's never done anything wrong. In his capacity in the king's court, he's never done anything wrong but be loyal. So there's been no evil. You haven't done any evil all the days of thy life. Now, of course, he's sinned in his life, right? There's none righteous, none one. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we know that David messed up and had Ahimelech's whole village killed. We know that. So it's not saying that he's never done anything wrong. It's just saying from her perspective and from his public position as a public servant, he's never done anything wrong. And she knows that. And everyone knows that. You're going to see that in the next chapter too, by the behavior of the men around Saul. Everyone knows Saul is toast. Everyone's just waiting it out on both sides. Everybody knows the foregone conclusion. Saul knows the foregone conclusion. He said as much himself. So she basically appeals to David's sensibilities here in her message. She gives him some gifts. Verse 29, yet a man is risen to pursue thee. And she's talking about Saul now. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee and to seek thy soul. But the soul of my Lord, David, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God. And so she's acknowledging his devotion to the Lord. He's not only known as a great soldier, but he's known as being a devout man in his following of the Lord and his commandments, although he hasn't been following that to perfection. But that's part of his reputation, and she's acknowledging it. And the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. So she's saying, I already know how this is going to go down. You've been faithful as a public servant. You've been faithful to the one who's hunting you down. You've been faithful to the Lord. And so we know the outcome of that. The Lord was going to do right, and he's going to sling out your enemies, and you're going to assume your rightful position as the king. She's alluding to all this. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and that's to be the king. Right? He's been told that he's going to be the king. And she says, so when all that happens, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, see, that this shall be no grief unto thee. Now, this is what his intentions were originally, was to go wipe out all of Nabal's family and Nabal himself. And she's like, once you become king, and we all know that you're going to be king, once you become king, you're going to regret what you were intending to do. It's going to be a blot on you, because you've never done anything wrong as a public servant. You've got a reputation. You've got a testimony of being a follower of the Lord, and you doing this would not fit all that. It'd be totally out of character, and there will be a day later that you will have regretted doing this. And how many people do that? Jails are full of people that are regretting a moment, a heat of the moment action, right? Again, that's where men got to kind of like check themselves, and that's part of that. That's the negative part of how men are wired. It's all a pride thing, and like I mentioned last week, how men are always looking to where they fit in, or at least when they're younger, and how they fit in society with the other men. If there's an affront there, it's an immediate offense. And this is how gun battles and gang turf wars, and it's all pride. Oh, that's pride. None of that has anything to do with money, has nothing to do with even the drugs. It's all pride. Now, you come into my area, this is my, it's like a bear marking his territory. You come in, he's going to fight you. This is mine. Right? And so men do a lot of stupid things in the heat of the moment. And sometimes it takes a wise woman to say something, but she has to say it the right way, or all she's going to do is dump fuel on the fire and make it worse. Right. And so she does everything totally properly and wise, considering the nature of men and women, for that matter, that sinful nature. And that's why you need good men in your society. Because I'll keep saying this, because this is where we're headed with the way things. We can't, we're in a post-Christian nation anymore. Right. So it's not like we're in the majority Ideologically, we're not in the majority anymore. Like even before, I mean, you could consider Catholics and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. Ideologically, they still understand gender roles, all this kind of stuff. They might have a false gospel, but you understand what I'm saying. So most, our society embraced pretty much most of the same morality and ethics and everything. It was all men are supposed to take care of their own family and all that other kind of stuff, right? I mean, this has been accepted. Well, you're living in a post-Christian nation anymore, so as we go on, I'm going to keep emphasizing that men will determine your existence, period. And if we continue down this path of emasculating men in our society and try to push a matriarchy, it will be the destruction of the country. Because these abstract theories that are discussed and bantered about by these Marxists is not reality and will never work. It will never work. That's why it never has worked. They're trying to create a new world in a classroom in their head instead of looking back at history and going, yeah, that's probably not going to work. But it's because they don't even embrace the nature of man, that we're all sinners and wicked. They don't even embrace that. Right? All men are good. They've just been taught wrong. They've been taught hate. Right? So you're a bigot. No, I'm just acknowledging like nature. I'm just acknowledging reality. I'm acknowledging what has always gone on. Always. That's called science, by the way. If one of these leftists goes into the jungle and observes gorillas for 3 decades and chronicles their behavior, they call that science. But if you do that with mankind, you're just a bigot.
Right.
How is acknowledging that male lions, rule the roost, and female lions are tough as nails and do all the hunting? But the point is there's an alpha and everyone falls in line. They call that science. They're the ones that think we're animals.
Right.
And they observe mankind, and you've got 6,000 years of scientific observation of mankind, and no, matriarchy, that's gonna be the way we should go.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's all satanic, because they don't even see the disconnect in their thought processes and the foundations of things they've argued. I know I've mentioned more than once about human rights. They always want to talk about human rights. Healthcare is a human right. A living wage is a human right. And they want to call everything a human right, but they don't have a basis for human rights. Why are there human rights? You're an evolutionist. Shouldn't we just let the fittest survive? Shouldn't we just let natural selection take its course? Shouldn't we do like Hitler and the progressives in the 1920s in the United States that were propagating eugenics? Why don't we wipe out all the people that have defects? Why don't we wipe out the weak? Why don't we wipe out the sick? Why are we quarantining? Let the sick die. Let them die. They're weak. They can't handle the virus. Let's spread the virus and get rid of the weak so that we can evolve. But they don't live that way. They're fighting what they say they believe, and they don't even know it. They don't have a basis for human rights. You're nothing different than an animal, so why should you have more? Is healthcare a right for the deer population? So why would it be a right for the human population? We're just another animal that got here by accident. Human rights come from this book. Human rights is because man was made in the image of God. Human rights is because man is special. Human rights come from Christians and Christianity. We have a basis for human rights. You don't. You don't get to make that argument. I could, but you can't. Or you're a hypocrite. Make up your mind. Are we animals or not? So they'll argue out of one side of their mouth on one subject and come completely out of left field out of the other side of their mouth on a different subject, and they're not consistent. Totally inconsistent with their foundational principles.
Right.
Totally. They don't have principles. It's all political expediency. It's satanic to the core. It doesn't have to be consistent because it's satanic.
Right.
What's convenient at the moment.
And we can see that. But Christians can't even. What I just said was foreign to most Christians. It's Christians that follow the principles or the ideas and tenets of the progressives. Mm-hmm. They'll fight with you about it.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm going to be emphasizing that as we go, because we're going to just be watching everything fall apart. Why? Because we live in a post-Christian nation.
Right.
And you're going to find out what it's like to realize how blessed you really have been. And our forefathers and our foremothers, for that matter, have been blessed. Do you think, and if you ever do watch that Free Burma Rangers video, or any other video about war and other places on the planet, if you watch that, you like I asked myself, because these people would have to flee from their villages. Like if the Burmese army was coming, you know, they would have to just leave, because if you didn't leave, they're coming, they'll kill you and burn down your village. They're going to burn down your village, so you might as well just leave. So they'd have to grab everything they have, their children, their women, all their belongings, and just walk to another part of the jungle. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if any of them are confused about their gender right now.
Yeah, right.
I wonder if they're upset that gays can't marry. I wonder if they're arguing about whether health care is a human right. They don't have time for that. Because they're just trying to survive.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's nobody questioning their gender in the middle of a jungle in the Civil War.
Right, right,
So why are there people in the West questioning their gender?
right.
Because they've been blessed, because they have time on their hands.
Much time.
Do you think anybody's got time to sit down and think about all these things except people in the West? And why do they have that time? Because our forefathers set up a society that's been better, but now I'm starting to wonder if it really is better. That's been better than any other society that's ever come before us. The fact that you even have time to think about what gender you are is evidence of how great America is, while you spit and say America's the great Satan and it's evil.
Right.
And when you know this stuff and you watch this stuff, it's all I can do to not pull my hair out. It's like you go half crazy, because it's like, how can people be this dumb and ignorant? And Christians, and on top of that, you know why? Because they're just distracted by all the shiny things around them. They're not thinking deep enough. They're not thinking at this level. Like, who watches a video and goes, I wonder if anyone's confused about their gender, but besides me and like 8 other people, and probably all of you in this room. But what I'm saying is, you know, there's a huge contrast. And if you see these deeper things and foundational things, like gender roles, now you know how evil gay marriage is. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say how evil the people were for wanting that.
Right.
That's a different discussion altogether. I don't care what other people do. I'll preach. It's my job to preach the gospel to them. It's my job to teach the scriptures. It's my job to go stand on a corner and teach and see what the Holy Ghost will do in their heart. It's not the government's job. But why do you think it was so important that it moved from civil unions in the 1970s to insisting that it be called marriage? It's satanic, because marriage is a thing that God created, and it underlines gender roles. But now it doesn't. Because marriage isn't a covenant between a man and a woman, apparently. Do you see the satanic influence there? That's satanic. You're attacking. It would be like the government making a ruling on what baptism is. They don't have a right to make a ruling on what marriage is. Marriage is a Bible word.
Right.
Marriage existed before government existed.
Right.
Why do you, and again, same people, separation of church and state. Okay, then why are you dipping your nose into our business? Marriage is our business, not yours. Just like baptism. Baptism is a biblical thing. Do you think the government's going to make a ruling on whether baptism is a human right for same-sex baptisms?
If you don't have a mask on.
Yeah, it's all the same goofiness, man. I'm just telling you. So all this stuff, it's not just politics. If you look past what's going on and you see what God's ways are, when you see the bigger picture on why gender roles are important, then you can see the satanic attack upon it and why it's necessary to upend these things. So these fights about gender fluidity, it's not about some progressive humanist political thing for those people to be happy in society. It's a satanic assault upon mankind's understanding of who God is in the scriptures, and it blinds people to what the scriptures are saying, so that the Holy Ghost can't. It's making it more difficult for the Holy Ghost to poke people. That's on purpose. Well, these people don't have any clue. They're not sitting there going, how can we make it easier for the devil? No, they're just the devil's tools.
Right.
It's all satanic, though. And all Christians should see that. So that's why it bothers me when I see Christians, people that say they're Christians, and talk about whether they really are saved or not. Put that aside. People that say they're Christians and follow the book, say they follow the book. How do they side and support that stuff? And embrace it. Say we just need to love it. Man, they're attacking who your father is. How many people can sit there and insult your father constantly, and everything that your father does, and then you just go hugging him and all? You know, why aren't you rebuking him? That's my dad. He's provided for me. He's protected me. He's given me a hope. He's given me an inheritance. He's given me everything to embrace him for. He's given me every reason to be thankful for my dad. And you're spitting at him, his character, who he is, what he's trying to do, his gracious hand and merciful hand. He's reaching out to everyone around you, and you're spitting in his face and calling him something that he's not. And you're trying to change who he is, the perception of who he is, to those around. And I'm going to embrace that and call myself a Christian? That just doesn't compute with me. But see, the reason why they do that is because they don't even understand half of what I'm just said in the last half hour. Because they don't think that deep. All they know is Jesus saves and love everybody. And they don't know how to put it all together. So Abigail here... Really, this is a perfect example of gender roles and how following the Bible works.
Amen.
It's not about who's more important than who. It's about just following the natural order of things. Because if you want your men to love you and provide for you, then you don't make your discussions a battle over authority. Because it doesn't have to be that way. And if you doubt, you know, at least in the West, if you doubt your husband's ability to be a husband, then why did you marry him in the first place? Mm-hmm. Maybe you should have thought about that before you got married. But that's another discussion. That's why we have biblical counseling with people before we'll marry them, because some of these things are what we talk about. Now, in the past, women didn't have much of a choice over who they married, but the fathers had the wisdom to put things together properly. I don't know what happened here with Nabal and Abigail, of course, but you know, there's obvious exceptions to the rule. But I have to wrap it up here because my time is out. But still, I wanted you to see how it's okay to have conversations as a man with women that ain't that are not your wife. If she's got something to tell you, if she notices something, then listen to her. But at the same time, women need to understand how to approach that conversation and how to dispense that, right? And so I think we don't have these discussions enough because most people of our ilk, they have one message on this, and it's just women shut up and just just be submissive, and they don't explain it all. They don't explain the natural part of it.
No, it's
we'll just call it a weakness. A weakness of men is their pride and their attempts to maintain their authority. And I wouldn't necessarily call that weakness. I think that's the way God programmed to be. But if it were a weakness, then understand the weakness and help him with his weakness by not pouring gas on the fire. It's not that hard, really. Men are rather simple. And they're rather simple, but our girls aren't raised right anymore in a post-Christian nation, and so they think marriage is just some partnership, and it's just you got your thing you're doing, and he's got his thing he's doing, and neither one of them are happy, and divorce rates go through the roof. Well, I wonder why, because none of you are doing your job. Right. And they don't even know what their job is because they're not reading this. And if they did read this, they would just get mad because they're not Christians, and then the leftists just change all the definitions and everything else, and they screw it up, and that's why our society is crumbling. It's not because Democrats are in power, it's because they're attacking your home. That's the root problem of all this.
Yes, it is.
You mess with gender roles, everything else falls apart, because the family is the foundation of a civil society, period. And I won't get into that stuff again. We've talked about that at length. If you ever have any questions, of course, I'd love to talk about it, but now's not the time. I've run out of time. All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for Abigail's wisdom. We're thankful that she had enough wisdom not only to have the right message, but the wisdom to dispense the message to David in a way that protected everyone involved in the account here. Everyone won in this account because this woman was the wisest person in the whole thing. And of course, David's wisdom kicked in there by taking the advice. But there's lessons there in how these interactions are supposed to be done. And because you've made us the way you've made us, Lord, and then on top of it, we're in a sin-cursed world, which makes it even worse. And so, Lord, help us to see what's going on around us. Help us to understand these things. Thank you for your book, and we thank you for this time together. And it's in